This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Your employee's deepest knowledge can't be transferred onto a series of PowerPoint slides or downloaded into a data repository. It has to be passed on in person, slowly, patiently, and systematically. There's a quote from the book we'll be talking about, Deep Smarts. Welcome to this episode of the podcast, Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. This is episode 153, and it's titled, How Cultivating Deep Smarts Will Advance Your Encore Career. As I've mentioned before, I'll soon be offering openings in my Encore Career Group Coaching Program. And this is a program that will enable you and a peer group to launch and develop your own Encore careers. So to get off to a powerful start, please contact me. Well, in this episode, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing insights in the book, Deep Smarts, How to Cultivate and Transfer Enduring Business Wisdom, and is written by Dorothy Leonard and Walter Swap. And also, I'll have a link in there to a Harvard Business Review article that, again, summarizes the book. So this book came out in 2005, and I actually read it about that time, and I was very intrigued by it. And I think at the time, it was more, I was still in the corporate world then, and I was thinking about how to transfer knowledge in the corporate world. But now I believe this has a lot of relevance to us who are launching Encore careers. We need to be able to develop clarity around what our key value proposition is. What is it we want people to pay us for? And how do we represent or present that to those who might want to hire us? So recently, Chip Conley of the Modern Elder Academy, he held a book club around this book, and it was a session with Dorothy Leonard and reviewed the information there, and again, how it applies to people in the next stage of life or their encore careers. So here's some observations from the session first. Dorothy went through and talked about some of the companies that do this well now, and she mentioned Procter & Gamble. They have what's called their Mastery Society. Various tech companies often have what they call engineering fellows. And again, these are people who clearly are at the top of their field in terms of knowledge and skills, and they've been given some kind of new assignments or part-time assignments, and that is to share their knowledge with the rest of the organization. Now, one of the things that Dorothy pointed out, though, was you don't hear a lot about this stuff because, quite frankly, companies like Procter & Gamble, they consider this their secret sauce. This is a key edge for them that they have in their lives. So, again, it's one of those things that's a remarkable thing that they're doing, but they don't talk about it much. Then Dorothy went on to describe what she felt were the skills of Deep Smarts are their experience-based and their she felt business critical knowledge. So it's a little different, and we'll talk about that later. It's a little different than maybe what we've been talking about in terms of wisdom, in terms of philosophy and things. This is more focused on business knowledge or business activities. And she described some key things. One is straight up technical knowledge. Two is having a systems perspective in your thinking and understanding the whole picture. Third is judgment. Again, being able to kind of weigh things when there's uncertainty or it's a complex problem. And then she talks about pattern recognition or diagnostics, having the ability to dive into something and see all those little hints and clues that'll help you find an answer to something. And then she talked about networks, the importance of knowing who. That's actually a form of deep knowledge too. I think we've all probably experienced that you went to somebody because you know that they know other people. And yes, as I'll mention before, smart people know other smart people. And then the final element of the key theme was context awareness. So again, there may be rules of thumb that exist, but again, that Deep Smarts or that expert will know, hey, those rules only apply in this particular context. They don't really work in this other context. Somebody asked Dorothy, what about intuition? Where does that play a role in those things? And she said, in her perspective, intuition was very fast pattern recognition. Again, being able to see things. And some of this may almost be unconscious. The person has seen it so many times. So it can be something that they don't even think much about. But yeah, we call it intuition, but it's probably seeing a pattern develop very quickly. Another person that asked during the book club, their perspective was people with deep smarts may not always be the best teachers. And Dorothy did acknowledge that. And she said, you may need to have people interview some of these people that hold these deep smarts to help them uncover their wisdom. And then as I think of applying this to us as developing our Encore careers, you may need to go to a former or current colleague or friend and actually have them interview you. Somebody that knows something around your expertise, but you may need to be able to start drawing out things about what you know by having somebody literally interview you. And in fact, I remember talking to someone, a good friend, and somebody said, well, I'd like to write a book. And she says, one way to do that is literally just have somebody interview you. It's sometimes hard for you to sit there and just behind your own desk and at your own computer, start detailing all the things you might know. But if somebody comes and actually does a wide-ranging interview, a lot of stuff will come up. You can answer questions maybe easier than you can just say things on demand about what you know. Now, then they talked about what are the things to watch out for us that have deep smarts and want to apply it. And some of it is experts have to know what goes out of style. The context may be changing or the technology may be changing. So some of what we know may have been appropriate in the context or technology before, but we have to be watching out. Has it changed? Is it going to look somewhat differently going forward? And then, again, Dorothy and Chip were both agreeing that know-how is not static. We always have to keep improving ourselves. And the final idea that they passed on is the idea of being an expert. In other words, you're not an expert where you just use your knowledge, but you're the one that's going to pass it on to the next person. And a couple of key ways that you can do that. Obviously, being a mentor, they mentioned the idea of creating artifacts. So that may be a white paper, maybe a podcast like we're doing right here. So there's different ways to, quote, create artifacts that people can come back and refer to later. And then the idea of rules of thumb. Again, there's limitations on that because you may have to update those rules of thumb based on new technology or new situations. But those are some of the ideas of how you could go on and pass on information. Next, I want to step back and do a few of the things that came out of both the book and the Harvard Business Review article. And they had a different, more comprehensive listing, characteristics and limitations of deep smarts. One of the first tasks they mentioned was making decisions. And so the novice may take longer to make decisions because there's just a wide variety of possibilities. And quite frankly, there's maybe a question of know-how. Do they even know what's relevant to this particular decision? The expert, they've often made these decisions before. They quickly recognize the facts. But then the limitation is, as an expert, we can be overconfident. We can make decisions. We can make them quickly, but we have to be aware of being overconfident or the fact that the technology, the context has changed. Considering context was another idea. Again, some of this is a matter of systems understanding. Some of it might be a matter of just having been around, experience. You've seen a lot of things happen. So the novice this may be all new to them, whereas you've seen this happen in a variety of different ways as an expert. But again, sometimes it's hard for you to explain those things to a novice. Oh, here's what you should do. But what you're unable to explain is, and these 5 things have to be present for you to do it that way. Then they talked about extrapolating information. Again, the novice just hasn't enough background to start extrapolating to other situations or where does this fit. The expert probably does have a feel for, this will be true up to this point, but then we'll have to change how we think about it. But the other problem is that even experts, they can extrapolate farther than it is truly true. So we just have to always be careful. We can extend our thinking, but we have to understand the limitations of that. Discrimination was another one. Just being able to say what this is this and that is something else. Again, the novice may be working with a recipe or process or frequently asked questions, but those are always simplifications inherently. Whereas the expert can start making a finer level of distinction. But again, this is one of those things where it's hard to always communicate that. So for you as the expert, it may be hard to pass on to somebody else. Oh yeah, this is that little tiny distinction that makes this work and that not work. And then there's just the fact that are people aware of what we don't know? Again, the novices, they don't know what they don't know. So that's a scary place to be sometimes. And the expert tends to know when the rules don't apply or when the rules or the rules of thumb are changing. But even the expert then, that's a risk they face, that they assume expertise in some new situation where it truly may not apply. And then I mentioned earlier, this pattern recognition. With a novice, they have limited experience, so they've only seen so many patterns, and they run the risk of saying, oh, this one's just like the other one, when in fact it's not. The expert has seen a lot of things happen, so they recognize there's different ways to see it. But sometimes, quite frankly, if it's a disruptive change that's completely outside what anybody's experience has been, the expert is in no better shape than the novice when patterns change dramatically. And then finally, they talk about the whole idea of tacit knowledge, what we know but we don't know. Again, the novice, they have to really rely on what's been made explicit. The expert, it's one of those things they can't always explain it, but somewhere inside they've had an experience or something tells them this is going to work better this way than that way. But it's, again, this is where you almost have to interview experts, but then you have to check with them on their assumptions and different things to really drill down. It can be very difficult to make visible tacit knowledge. Then finally, in the book, in the HBR article, they talk about, okay, so how do we go tackle this? One of the first things they say, before you try to transfer expert knowledge, make sure the catcher's ready before you pitch. So we really have to have it set up so both the expert and the novice understand the relationship they're in and what we're trying to do. But then they said guided experience is probably the best path that they had seen to transferring organizational knowledge, at least the deep organizational knowledge. So the novice has to go out and have experiences, but it really helps if they're getting rapid feedback from a coach. Not someone who's judging them or criticizing, but someone who is with them as truly a coach, but at the same time, giving them feedback and expanding their knowledge base. But since a lot of this is truly still experiential, you have to have patience at it. So that's where Deep Smarts is, How to Cultivate and Transfer Enduring Business Wisdom by Dorothy Leonard and Walter Schwab. The book itself, it was done in the context of organizations. And that's, like I said, where I first found it when I was in an organization. But I think it's still very useful for us to talk about how to use this to help develop our expertise as we begin to create our company of one and take our expertise out into the marketplace. Now, there's a complementary book, and I won't go into this in great depth, but I just recommend it because it comes up, even in the title, you can show how it's a contrasting view, and it's called Rookie Smarts, Why Learning Beats Knowing in the New Game of Work by Liz Wiseman. So there's a website called 4 Minute Books that summarizes books, and then they said, the world's knowledge changes so fast, it really makes rookies a necessity. Rookies can have more expertise than their peers just because they ask questions and get help. And even if you're not a rookie anymore, you can regain rookie smarts by putting yourself into a learning mode. So again, this is the contrasting idea that, hey, the naive questions, the rookie, especially in a dramatically changing technology world, this is a valuable way to be thinking about it too. So then we, as people who are starting Encore careers, I always say we have to own our expertise and yet have the mind of a beginner. So we're both the expert, we're both the master, and we're the apprentice. And so I kind of like that contrast with Deep Smarts and Rookie Smarts, that we really have to have both sides of that in different contexts of our work. But it does remain very interesting to me. How can we blend the ideas of Deep Smarts and Rookie Smarts together as we advance and try to have a successful Encore career? So please remember, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. And to get a powerful start, please contact me and let's see how we might work together on this. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.